Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, I'm joined by the Senior Vice President of Minor League Operations, formerly serves as an Assistant General Manager to the Diamondbacks and the Director of Player Operations for the Boston Red Sox. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Woodfork. Peter, thanks for coming on the program.
Hey, Brett, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be able to get on.
You've been involved in a lot of things: Major League Baseball, minor league baseball. Now your focus is on the minor league side. Tell the audience, get me up to speed on you. I know you were an Ivy League baseball player. You went to Harvard. My son went to Princeton, so I have the father's perspective of what that's all about. But give me a little background. I know you were with the Diamondbacks as the assistant general manager, worked in the Boston front office. Give us a little
Yeah,
recap of Peter Woodfork.
I'll give you the quick. So I had to go to the Ivy League because, probably like your son, I couldn't hit. So took that direction. Was able to play, had a great time. Got out and really didn't know what I wanted to do, but had played baseball, at the college level for a long time. So was able to fortunately come to the commissioner's office first. Worked here for a couple of years, and then went over to the Red Sox and worked in player development mostly. And on to Arizona, where I was assistant GM. And, like most people who work in baseball front offices, we lost 100 games my last year. So I got fired, moved on, and ended up at the commissioner's office, kind of really day-to-day overseeing umpiring. And, with a thought and a hope that we could put in some replay in. So that was the big project I worked on for a while. And then, worked on umpiring, and you can only do that so long. Turned my hair very gray very quickly, and then moved on to work in the minor leagues, kind of when we were restructuring the minor leagues, trying to help modernize it a little bit. And again, a little background in player development helped. Been with a major league organization, been in the commissioner's office, so had a good perspective. And it was just fortunate enough to be able to work the whole time with some good people, from the Boston days with, Theo and Ben Charrington and others, and in Arizona with Josh Burns. And then back at the commissioner's office, started working under Joe Torre. Now I work under Morgan Sword, who kind of runs our baseball operations department, who's tremendous. And again, really been fortunate for all of my career to work with good people, which is all you can really ask for.
When you started in the Ivy League, and I mentioned that at the top about being a father, when my son ended up going to Princeton, and of course, as a dad, it's like, wow, he got into the big brag in our family. I went to USC. My daughter went to USC. Aaron went to USC. My father went to Stanford. So around the dinner table, he always had the one up on the intellectual side until Jake went to Princeton, and then now they're battling, and now we're just the SC guys sitting on the outside. But it's really interesting, the Ivy League and the athletics, because there are no athletic scholarships.
No.
Weather is tough from the baseball aspect. I never thought about it when Jacob decided to go to Princeton. I remember we took him there. Kind of a spring. It was getting into the spring. We took a trip. We went down to Dartmouth. We went to Penn, and we ended up in Princeton. It happened to be a beautiful day. Now, I grew up in New Jersey as a kid, so I know what that weather's all about. We just happened to hit that perfect day. Sun's out, birds chirping, about 68 degrees, and he's walking this campus. He said, "Dad, this is where I've got to be." I said, "Now, Jake, you realize this isn't really what the weather's like." He found that out, but he didn't miss a beat. He loved it. But I remember going back there and battling that weather. And yet that season starts in February. There's a reason the big clubs are down in spring training in February. And it's a rain out and it's a snow out. But what were the biggest challenges for you? I felt like if you go to a USC or an SEC baseball school, you're a let me call it student athlete, but it's kind of an athlete student. Whereas I truly saw student athletes at the Ivy League. It seemed like these guys were students preparing for life, and they happened to play baseball on the side. Was that your kind of recollection of your Harvard years?
Yeah, I think it was the balance. Again, we grew up with kids who are going to different schools to play at different sports, and I think that it came to fruition for me. We were down in Miami playing, and it was spring break, first trip, freshman, and I was sitting in the training room, at the University of Miami, and we're about to get pummeled, and I was doing homework, I had like a something new. So I was reading a book at the time, Pat Burrell was at Miami, and he walked in and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I got to study. I mean, it's tough enough. I'm not that smart, and I'm at Harvard." And he looked at me and said, "Man, you got to get better tutors there." We don't have tutors.
That's right. I walked through it with Jacob, and you guys are working on your thesis, and everybody else is getting ready for a regional.
We played in 3 regionals when I was there.
Did you?
In all 3 years, I was taking tests in the stadium.
Yeah.
LSU is going crazy. They're playing someone above me, and underneath that stadium, I'm filling out bubbles on what's the right answer on this test. And I thought to myself, this is not how it's supposed to be. But again, it prepared you, I think, a little bit for all college, no matter where you are. As you know, you got to study and you got to go to school and you got to get through it. And again, I always say, once you get to Harvard or any Ivy League school, again, predominantly around a lot of smart people, but every college is tough. Everyone has to balance a lot of different things. And no matter where you went, you probably come up well prepared to do whatever you're going to do next. So again, I give a lot of credit for every man, woman who gets through, 4 years of college, because it isn't easy. And, again, there's a lot of different things you can be doing.
See, that's why I went to college for 3 years, because I know 4 is really hard. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the umpiring in today's game. Yeah. Obviously, I came from a generation, and I'm a purist at heart to the game. However, being on this side of the microphone now and being in an analytical position, I've become very open-minded to the game moving forward. And whereas if you'd have talked to me 15 years ago, I'd leave the game alone, don't touch it, don't get off my lawn, this is the greatest, it's the way it should be. But I'll tell you, I've been pleasantly surprised with some of the changes and the progressions that have gone on in the game of baseball. I'm not tickled to death about every single one, but I've been pleasantly surprised at some of the changes we've had. Here's one I'm battling with right now, and when it comes to the umpires. And I've had several umpires on the show. Joe West has come on, and Tim Cheatham, who's retired, Ted Barrett, who recently retired. And the overwhelming consensus is the umpires today in today's game, 2024, are technically as good as they've ever been. And I watch these games on a daily basis, and I'm telling you, they are. When I came to the big leagues, 1992, it was kind of the good old boys show. And if it was getaway day, we had to get out of there. I'm telling you, that strike zone got wider and wider. And as a player, that's really tough to deal with, because it's like, listen, we've got to have a certain amount of integrity. Keep that strike zone the way it is, because these numbers matter for me. I've got arbitration this offseason, and this strikeout right here versus maybe a base hit, that matters to me. So it was kind of that, you go through that rookie hazing when I was young. Man, if it was a veteran pitcher on the mound and I was in the box, believe me, I didn't get the benefit of the doubt. You kind of had to earn it. I look at today's umpiring, and I think it's as even playing field as there's ever been as far as that rookie veteran treatment. I think everybody's out there. They're given behind the scenes what the actual strike zone is. The thing that's driving me nuts, and I think you can enlighten me and the audience on, is the box for entertainment purposes only that is shown on Fox and the MLB channel. And it seems that we've gotten away from the game, and now the commentators, all they want to talk about is pitch to pitch. If it doesn't hit that line, oh, he's got a wide zone today. When really, from my information gathering, that's not even what the umpires are graded on. That's just kind of for the audience. And I think it's great that everybody can get involved and have a little bit of an idea what a ball and a strike is. But speak to that. What really is the box, and is it truly for entertainment purposes only?
Yeah, I think the box on TV is more entertainment than exact, just because there are some adjustments that go through. But again, I think like you said it, I was super fortunate. When I entered the umpiring world, not knowing a lot about it, we were past the days of all those things that used to happen. And really, again, from I was 64 to 76, those people really cared about their jobs. They went out every day. Again, did they miss pitches? Absolutely. Did they miss calls? Absolutely. But they cared about their job. And never once did I get there where I thought, like, hey, this guy's not giving what he needs to give. And I think, again, it's gotten better and better and better. But as you said, more and more the scrutiny is on it. You didn't even have all games televised in the 80s, right? Like you could go a week or 20 days in the West Coast and no one on the East Coast saw any of your games. Today, it's every pitch, every play, not just scrutinized by the people sitting that are your boss or they're there to judge and to do that, but also by every single fan. And again, I think it's just a different dynamic than it was previously. And the other thing that I don't think people talk about is the stuff is unbelievable. I think the best thing that you ever see is when you bring, reporters or writers or even former players to umpire school or umpire camp, and you put them back there and you have a guy who's throwing 93 to 94. And they actually see it from the perspective of an umpire who's got a catcher in front of him and the plate and the stuff coming out. You don't know what's coming. And you see it from that perspective versus now you popped up, guys are throwing 103. And the ball's going in every single direction. And and the catchers are better than they ever were. And you get all that. It makes it a really tough job, behind the plate. And they still do it extremely well. Now, again, I worked with them, so I probably am a little biased. I'm the first to admit it. But again, where it goes, I don't know where it goes. I do think the great thing is that in the minor leagues, we have the ability to test a lot of different stuff. So again, from the pitch clock, which I think has helped everyone, to shifting to, again, the different things we're testing in the minor leagues on ABS, automatic ball strike. Again, it's a good platform in the minor leagues to see what's going to happen at the major league level. And again, where they go, fortunately for me, I'm out of that business after it leaves the minor leagues. I let the major league people and all those others decide those things. But in the minor leagues, I think it's a great, platform to be able to kind of test things that can happen at the major league level.
And I'll tell you, I am a friend of the umpires in today's game. I know how hard it is. So I see the criticism, and it's different. My last time in a uniform was 2008,
Yeah.
and Twitter wasn't a thing and social media wasn't a thing. Now everybody's an expert. It kind of drives me crazy because they don't know what it's really like to be in the box. They don't know how hard it is. There is the human element always involved. When I was, during my time, it was basically, all right, who's behind the plate tonight? We know what kind of umpire he is. And what they did is they established their zone early in the game, and the great ones stuck to that zone. And some guys might be a high ball umpire, might be a low ball. But as long as we established it in the first couple innings, I knew what was a strike and what was a ball. And those guys were pretty darn good and professional at keeping to that. So both sides knew what the strike zone was, pitchers and hitters. Like you said, nowadays, it's more of a uniform. And the more I think about it, as much as I enjoyed my time and I like that, and I knowing the umpires and that banter that goes back and forth when you're in the box, having a universal strike zone behind the scenes, having access to it as a hitter, and then the umpire employing that to the best of his ability. So now it's not every day I'm coming to the ballpark. Who's behind the plate? Is it a pitcher's ump? Is it a hitter's ump? No, it's a uniform. We know exactly what the strike zone is. Well, we don't know exactly because I still think it's a science that hasn't been completely perfected yet. We're in that zone, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. But umpires, let's say the game ends in the current day. They go to their umpiring room. What happens? Do they get a readout? They tell how good they were, how bad they were. If there's an incident during the game where he throws out he would never throw out Aaron Boone. He gets thrown out about once a week. But
he's got a lot of emotion.
What's the reporting? I just want to let people in on behind the scenes on what goes on in that umpire's room after a game, how he did in the game, especially the umpire behind the plate, or if there was an instance where somebody got thrown out of a game, the paperwork that's involved there.
Yeah. Again, it's changed probably over time, and I haven't been in it in a couple of years, but yeah, again, maybe not 20 minutes after a game, because again, there's adjustments that need to be made and the data needs to come in on the pitches and all that stuff. So back in the day or 2020 before, most umpires look at it the next morning. They may go in and look at a certain pitch, look at it on TV, look at it on their computer to see maybe something there, especially. But now, as you know, they'll still ask players, hey, where was that pitch last at bat? Did I, was it on or whatever? But for the most part, they're looking at it the next day, getting their readout on all their plays, both their close plays in the field, if they're field umpire, and all their pitches. And again, they all look at it. again, I think, but it's tough. Not every day when you go to work do you get a report card at the end of the day, right? That tells you how you did. And, with any job, that's tough, again, where it's every day, here's what you did right, here's what you did wrong. And I think that's kind of the ones that you got to be a tough person. You got to be able to take constructive criticism, which, again, everyone thinks they're good at, but in reality, not a lot of people are. And I think their ability to take that information and use it to try to get better is the key. And I think they all, for the most part, that's what they do. And I think that's when you see it. And you see on a big issue, like you have an ejection or something crazy happen on the field. Yeah, they're in there right away, writing a report saying, this is what happened from my perspective. Someone's attaching video to it so that everyone can see what happened from all the different camera angles. And those are coming in. And again, that helps Mike Hill and his team today make determinations on, discipline, was things handled correctly, learning experience, all the different things that you would have in a normal job. I think what people forget is that it's a job, right? It's a job, just like being a player is a job, and it comes with certain responsibilities. And you see the 3 hours of the game, hopefully the 2.5 hours of the game these days, but you see that portion of the game is very public. The rest of it, is complex, and it's like any other job. It comes with different responsibilities. Umpiring is not just being an umpire on the field. It's all the other things you need to do as well. Like you got to get there every 3 days. You got to show up on time. You got to, look the part. You got to be in shape. All those other things are part of being a professional umpire. Just like part of being a player is your responsibilities that, you have that are signing autographs or doing interviews or doing the other things that aren't as public probably as the 3 hours of hitting balls or pitching balls or fielding or defending. So again, it's a complex job. It's difficult. And I think, again, like NFL referees, like NHL referees, like NBA referees, they all have some issues that they go through, but for the most part, they're doing their jobs and they're doing well.
Peter, I used to get a report card every day. And sometimes it was really good. Sometimes I sucked.
Yeah. So players are so, but it's not like, again, I always tell my 9-year-old, you get that report card twice a year or 3 times a year. It's a little different, right? Than it is every day. Someone tells you did it right or wrong.
What's the one thing when you went into that, and then we'll move on to the minor leagues. What's the one thing when you were overseeing the umpires that you learned that surprised you?
What I learned, you know what? I'll tell you this. The one that I did was my first postseason. We got in there and, I didn't know what to expect. I'd been on the Major League organization side, been to the postseason, been to World Series on that side. You kind of good idea what the players were like and how each game ended. And I've never seen it from that perspective. Was full suit, tie. Everyone comes to the ballpark. It's super quiet at the beginning, and it's again, I started in March, and this is the first postseason, and then the game ended, and it was the home plate umpire had worked a tremendous game. The first game, I think it was Greg Gibson actually who had worked the plate, and he came off, and he was as fired up as I had seen any player after a win or anything. And the game was a 6-3 game. It was Yankees Detroit, someone like that, and he came off, and and the whole group of 6 of them were fired up, like as ecstatic that they had worked a clean game, no missed calls, no controversies. The plate umpire had worked a good game, and it was like, again, like they showed more emotion than I ever expected. I just thought they would come off like they had come off, worked a good game, like you done a good job, but they were fired up for their partner who had done worked a good plate job, and that all of them had got through with nothing going on. And I thought to myself, Jesus, these people are as serious as that other team. As I'd watched Pedro come off in the postseason, or Sherling, or those people being fired up after they did it. It was the same exact thing I saw on the umpiring side, and I didn't expect it. Honestly, I should have expected it, but I didn't expect it, and it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like you got 3 teams on the field. It's like, the 2 teams playing, and then the umpire crew, and how did we do? And sometimes you had a great game, and you're fired up. And sometimes,
I saw them come off sometimes when they knew something bad had happened.
Yeah.
And they were like, damn. And it was dead quiet in that room. And it was like you said, it was like how teams respond. I mean, you get waxed in a postseason game, you come off, and the clubhouse is dead quiet. No one's saying anything, versus like the music's on and people fired up because they knew they played well. So.
get to the minor league side now. Minor leagues are different. You know, when I came up, you had the basic rank. You had your rookie ball, you had your low A, your high A, your double A, your triple A. You might have an extra rookie ball team, an extended spring team. The minor leagues is changing now. It's the independent leagues are becoming more prominent. Um, there's been some affiliates that have gotten rid of some levels of play. Um, how's it changed in the last 20 years from how we go about our business on the minor league side of things?
Yeah, as you said, I think it's probably become more professional. In the sense of the facilities have improved and gotten better. We've tried to cut back on travel to get guys in enough rest and recovery. Probably a more efficient system. Again, more players that are entering it or making it to the major leagues than previously. With that kind of cutback numbers. I think it's just gotten. I hate to use this term because it's probably too broad, but it's just gotten more modern, right? It's just no longer is it sleep in your car, and try to
Right.
make it through and really, you know, make people struggle in order to try to do it. I think everyone instead focuses on trying to make big leaguers, right? And what's the best way to do that, both from where you're playing, your facility, to the food you're eating, to how much sleep you're getting, to the travel demands. So I think that, restructuring was to kind of modernize it. At the same time, the independent leagues and the partner leagues, as you said, have also gotten more important, right? There's probably a little more opportunity to come out of those leagues now and enter into professional baseball, not professional, into affiliated baseball. And summer leagues have become much bigger, right? Like when you were playing, you
Right.
probably played in Alaska or the Cape Cod,
That
right?
that
And it
was
was
it.
one of the two. And if you're on the West Coast, you played on one, and you're on the East Coast, you played on the other. If you're in the middle, you kind of flip the coin, and wherever you call it. Now there's a lot more college summer opportunities, right? And they're all over the country. And that's a good thing too. It's having baseball in more places is great for baseball. Both major league, minor league, independent, collegiate. You're developing fans, you're developing people that love the game. And again, the structure doesn't always have to just be major league affiliated baseball. There's a lot of other good opportunities out there. And I think you see it now. I mean, now it's, as I said, like college, I think college summer baseball is one of the biggest examples of it. It is everywhere, right? And it builds fans and builds fandom, and that's good for baseball. And it's good for both. In fact, it's good for the major league players, or because once you become baseball fans, you become fans of the game, and that's a good thing.
You're right. I mean, back in the day, it was Cape Cod, and it was Alaska, and that was the only opportunities. And if you weren't an elite, usually Division I college player, you didn't have an opportunity in the summer because those jobs were taken. Now the masses can play college summer ball and continue to hone their skills. Where in past it was like, well, there were certain guys, they just weren't good enough to because the spots were taken by the elite players. And I think it is great for the game of baseball. You talk about the minor leagues. My AAA was in Calgary, Canada. And in my day, by the time you got to AAA, the field started to get a little bit nicer. But A ball, it was in that Carolina league, and I'm telling you, they would build in your statistics defense on defense. They would build in errors because they said, well, you got to look at the fields these guys play on, and they would take that into account. I see A ball fields now, and they're nice. I mean, some
Yeah.
got the turf and they're really nice as far as conditions. The food has gotten much better. We didn't have food in A-ball. They'd throw hot dogs at me and go, "There's your spread." Um, I wouldn't change the way I came up because you're right. It was sleeping in your car, sleeping on a couch. I remember we didn't have a per diem for where we stayed. It was, hey, you make $750 in A-ball, and that includes everything. So you got to find a Piccadilly to eat at every day for $3.99, and you got to find somewhere to live. And it was like, how about 100 and a quarter, and I'll stay on your couch. But I remember the hunger that I had then was like, I don't care what I make, I don't care what I sleep, I just want to hit and I want to get the hell out of here and get to double A. And when double A, I want to hit and get the hell out of here and get to triple A. And it really, I look back on those times and that struggle that I went through, you kind of appreciate it one day. You look back, go, remember when we used to do that and then race home and watch Sports Center or Baseball Tonight and see who the big guys, what the big guys were doing. So part of me likes that, but seeing the facilities now and just going to instructional ball and seeing the facilities that these kids have, it's pretty cool, and everything at their disposal. And like you said, they're into creating big leaguers and giving each player, no matter their personality, the best chance to go as far as they can.
And I think I think it's one of those things where, again, you made it through, so it was probably you can look at it a little more fondly than the person who didn't make it through and thought, hey, if I didn't have to go through this struggle and going to debt, whatever it was, it didn't make it. But I would say the same thing, when we're talking to teams, and the communities we have been tremendous in helping us, improve those facilities, and they really have gone all out, a lot of them. But I always say it's like when we're choosing hotels, I said, if you wouldn't put your head on it, you don't want to put someone else's child's head on it, right? So it's like you want your son to have a good opportunity to play and good opportunity to stay somewhere that's safe and stay somewhere that's clean. And I don't think we're asking for like, hey, our facilities aren't as nice as probably the baseball stadium at Ole Miss, but but they have gotten, to the point where they're good opportunity, they're good working conditions, right? The places where you need to go to work are places that you want to be. And I think that's the standard we want, is that there's opportunities for female facilities, there's opportunities, for you to have a clean place to do your job. And I think that's something that we really try to focus on and improve.
Minor leagues, ABS, which is the auto balls and strikes. Once again, 15 years ago, you asked me that question, I'll throw you out of the room. Are you kidding me? No, that's not how we do it in professional baseball. But where this is going, where the conversation's going, the scrutiny, the data that we have, the stupid box that I don't like, I'm starting to be kind of a proponent of it and think, if we're getting to this point in society and we've advanced this far, as a hitter, if I was to put myself into their position as a young hitter in the big leagues, it's like, well, if I know what the strike zone is and it's going to be automated, I guess at least I know what I'm getting each and every day. Now, and I want you to speak to this, but I don't think it's completely perfect, the system, and I think it's getting better and better as we go on. But I don't know. I think we're at a point where, as a hitter, I might say, you know what, screw this. I'm sick of the controversy. I don't want to argue this or that. Put in the automated strike zone. At least I know what I'm getting for the most part, day in and day out. It doesn't matter who. We're not talking about umpires anymore and who's behind the plate today, and he's a low ball ump, high ball ump. So I'm starting to kind of warm up to it. What are you seeing in the minor leagues, how it's been implemented, the success? What's the feedback from the players?
Yeah, so again, where it goes, that's fortunately for the commissioner and the competition committee to decide. But in the minor leagues, as you know, we run two different type styles. We run a full ABS system, which is every ball, every strike. It's called by the computer. Often if you're sitting in like the 10th row, you'd have no idea. It's kind of doesn't look that way. The umpire still makes calls behind the plate. And then we run a challenge system, which is a couple of challenges per team. If you get it right, you keep it. And, again, it's the umpire calling balls and strikes. And if someone has a question on one, kind of like tennis, some tennis now, I guess, that you can challenge it. And again, the fans seem to, at least at the minor league level, the fans seem to enjoy that challenge system better. The players, again, because you have a lot of catchers and, depends on your position you play, seems like challenge system better, pitchers. But again, I don't think we, from my viewpoint, we're not the decision makers in this one. We're just making sure that the testing is going well. We're getting feedback, as you said, from players, from umpires, from fans, all those things, and providing it to, the people on the competition committee, the commissioner, and those groups to see where they're going to go. But again, for me, it's the pride that we have that we can test something, that we can, we have really good players in the minor leagues. It's a really good system, and it gives you really good information, as you know, on kind of what's going on. So whatever they decide to move up, yes or not, no, I know that we'll have given them the base to be able to make a good decision. And that's all, again, at the minor league level. And we're not impacting player development, right? We're still developing players under the circumstances that are similar to what they're going to have in the big leagues. The umpires are still developing as well at the minor leagues, which is part of it as well. They got to be able to call balls and strikes if you're going to have to call balls and strikes in the big leagues. So, again, the process has worked well. We'll see where it goes. I'm not sure where that will be.
Do you have data on so far what you've collected on the players and when they challenge, how often the hitter is right versus wrong?
Yeah, they're not as good as you think. It's kind of public if everyone followed them all. Everyone knows the strike zone. It's funny. It's funny. I'll just give an anecdotal on it. But, you go down there and you see some of the managers in AAA. And I'm like, oh, how's it going? Ball strikes, and you're like, man, it's great. I just can't let my pitcher ever challenge. He's the worst challenger in the world. So so every team takes a different approach on it, which is interesting. Like some are like, only the catcher can challenge, right? I never want a pitcher challenge, and the catcher will know the strike zone. Others are like, we never challenge in the first couple innings. We're just terrible at it. And it's really funny, though, like when you get down there, because even with players, you're like, hey, how's challenge going? They're like, Mike uses all the challenges. Every damn game, he's using the first two challenges before, and he's never right. And I'm like, oh, God. So, and then, I do think it makes for them, what strategy you're going to apply as an organization, as a team on ABS is always interesting too. So it's another kind of thing in the game that people don't see maybe every day, but every club has a plan on what they're going to do.
Do the players and the uniform personnel, do they like is the feedback you're getting, they like it?
I mean, again, I think some like it, some don't, like anything else in this world, right? Like you get feedback all over the place on kind of, and it's also, as when you're talking at the field, people are emotional, right? Like it's what happened last night.
Right.
Last night I got screwed by this guy, so you should put in. The other guy is like, yeah, I went 3 for 4 last night. Everything's perfect in the world, no matter what happened. So you get a lot of that too. I think it's better when you talk to them in the off season, when we get them and you're kind of stepped away, right? It's like when you talk to a manager after they've been ejected. Like it's just no matter what happened, they're pretty fired up, right? Whereas the next day when you talk to them, I think I learned that from Joe Torre. It's like you got to give everyone in the moment the ability to kind of get through the moment, and then the next day you kind of understand a little better on what happened, what's going on, like where you're really at. Because baseball is every day, and you have to be able to learn to reset. And so people reset that next day, and you get kind of the better feedback.
What does Peter Woodfork think? Do you think this is good and this will better the game?
Peter Woodfork is an employee of MLB. So, all right. To say, again, I have a lot of faith in the people that are making those decisions. Again, and we'll see what happens.
How do we keep the human element but embrace technology?
Yeah, and I think that's a question for everything, right? Like I think the pitch clock was a huge decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we studied it for a long time. Over 8,000 games in the minor leagues were played with pitch clock before we decided what we were going to do. And I think that there's always that balance, human element, electronics, and it's not unique to baseball, right? And I think that's what makes it interesting. And where we go is, I think as long as you're thoughtful and you do, you get the information and you'll make good decisions. And I think that's where we're at. And this will be one of many more decisions that need to be made on if ABS comes in.
All right. Well, Peter Woodfork, that was very cool and very enlightening. I mean, I've been interested. I've seen how the minor leagues are changing, and really interested in the umpiring situation. I think the changes that have gone on recently. A year ago, you mentioned the pitch clock. I as a former player, and thinking, my first thing was, well, how are we going to do that? How are we going to get the signs? How are we going to get? You're right, though. The players adjust and they make it work. And now
players are that's the one thing I will give you to end it. Players are unbelievable athletes that have the ability to adjust on every. I mean, we put it in from catch, no catch. If you remember that little controversy, sliding at second base, collisions on home plate, and what you realize is that these guys they're unbelievable at what they do and their ability to like make adjustments. In order to stay in the major leagues for a long period of time is just incredible. And I think that's the one thing that I will take away from, working this game is that players are, they're just very, very talented people.
Yeah, and that pitch clock, it's unbelievable because I went into it going, okay, I've got an open mind. And I'm thinking I'm never gonna like this, right? I'm gonna be the biggest critic. I love it, and all it did is kind of push us back to where the game used to be, where take it little time in between pitch, but not what we got into the 3.5 hour games. And I think it's been awesome. I was all worried about the two disengagements. But when you think about it, what they had in mind is no, we want to get back to playing the game where we're used to stealing bases. You're encouraging stealing bases. Now people are starting to steal bases. And probably in a few years, you're going to have to tweak that because too many people are stealing too many bases. But I think a lot of the things have been really positive that, a Bret Boone, the player, would really oppose. And now I think it's pretty cool and it's moving the game forward. And I think you're getting a lot of people interested and a lot of fan engagement. Sometimes a little negative, but for the most part, you're getting a lot of fan engagement.
Yeah. Again, just trying to get back to kind of the game that was people really, really liked in like the 80s and 90s, right? Where it was a ton of action, ball in play, good athletes. It's fun to watch.
Yep. Peter Woodfork, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you. And for those
Thanks,
out
Bret.
there watching the Bret Boone podcast, now we have our own YouTube channel. Check it out. For those of you listening to the podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, I appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, we'll be right here. Thanks, Peter.